Atheist Nomads, episode 236, Shepherd's Rod.
The podcast you're about to listen to includes cursing and talking about hoo-haws. Please be advised.
Welcome to another episode of Atheist Nomads. I am Dustin. Joining me is Lauren.
Hello.
We have little baby Kylie, hopefully sleeping.
Yeah.
And we have big grown-up Kylie.
Yeah. Yay. Hi. And Rocco.
And we have Kylie Recula with us again. Thank you so much for being our wildcard interview. Mm-hmm. That was definitely helpful.
Yeah. And fun.
By the time it came on, I was like, I don't even remember what I said. So it was like new to me.
Awesome.
I feel like I vaguely remember that topic.
Yeah.
This is fun.
Yeah. So yeah, it was cool.
And how's everybody doing?
Good.
I'm a little under the weather. Wasn't sure if I was going to be on today. I may still cut out. But yeah, doing good.
All right, Kylie?
Enjoying the hopefully, was it supposed to snow today? I don't know.
The not wintry weather that we're having.
I'm just hoping it's done and we're going to move into spring soon. Because, yeah.
See, I was thinking the exact opposite. I'm like, okay, so we've had spring. Now we need a winter.
No, I'm not. At least it was not like last year's winter. That was
incredible.
Yeah.
God, that was... Well, I have a patch that says I survived Snowpocalypse 2017, so I'll always have that.
Yeah. And for our listeners not in the Treasure Valley, last winter we had record snowfall in Boise.
Yeah.
Both record amount of snow in one day and record amount of snow on the ground.
By the time that last year, there was, 3 feet of snow outside?
Yeah. It was bad.
By this time last year, we were back down to about 6 inches. The highest we ever got to was 16 inches. But that's a lot for here.
Yeah. In Ontario, they were, I don't know if the amount was different, but they were just not prepared for it. So my kids were off school for like a week and a half just because there was all these buildings that were now not safe because there was snow on the roofs and stuff like that. So it was, and there was a bunch of buildings that collapsed and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Weiser got hit hard. That lavender farm lost everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was out in the outskirts of the Treasure Valley. I mean, Treasure Valley suffered, yeah, but at least we had our main roads plowed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You get out into the rural area, and it was...
Vale, Ontario, Payette, Fruitland, Weiser got hit hard.
Yeah.
Yep, a lot of businesses were poorly affected.
I think Vale got... Actually, I think that whole area there got closer to 3 feet.
Yeah.
It was enough for the Goodrich to go down.
Yeah. And there was a couple of the, silos kind of thing, storage that just collapsed. And now they've rebuilt some of them. They're like, okay, well, we might as well rebuild stuff. So I guess it was good.
Yeah. Most of the oldest buildings also went down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
it's
also
stronger.
The Ontario High School, because it's so old in some places. Yeah, that was the one. I think that was the one they couldn't ensure was going to be safe. So then they didn't have anybody come back to school. So yeah.
And then this year, it's been, we've gotten snow a couple times, but it's been mostly nice and warm.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's been a few days where it's been warmer here than Florida.
Oh, really?
Yeah, during, that, what do they call that storm that went through the East Coast? The something bomb? Or
the cyclone bomb?
Cyclone bomb, whatever they called it.
Cyclone, one of those.
Yeah, we were actually warmer than some parts of Florida, and that's pretty hilarious.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. It was like they had their snowpocalypse.
Right. Is Florida one of those places that like they get a little bit of snow and they freak out and they don't know what to do with it probably?
Well, it's the South. They don't know.
Yeah.
It never happens.
Yeah.
And you get two different scenarios. There's places that don't get snow, so they don't know what to do. And then there's places that you just can't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
The South is they don't know what to do, so they aren't equipped for it, so they can't handle it.
Right.
Nobody has any, set of tires or chains or anything like that, and they don't plow the roads because they don't have plows because that's stupid.
Yeah.
It's Florida.
Yeah.
You don't need plows in Florida.
Yeah. Or it's like in Colorado. I had in-laws that lived in Colorado Springs, and so we would go down there sometimes during Christmas, and it's like they have the weirdest weather patterns there. It's like it would be suddenly like in the middle of a blizzard and there's snow everywhere, and then the next day it's all burned off and we're all back to it's like, and people there are just like, whatever, they figure out how to work through it, so it's no big deal. But it was bizarre.
Yeah. Now, speaking of bizarre and changing the subject off of the weather, for Dustin Off the Degree, we are starting the series on bizarre religions and offshoots. So this is going to be a lot of interesting Christian sects out there.
Nice.
And
I'm not the only one that was thinking that.
Yep, even Rocco liked that one.
And because
I was going to make a joke with the shepherd's rod and cheap, but I'm going to let that one go.
Because they have some of the more interesting ones, just because of what happens, we're going to start with some of the Adventist and Mormon ones. So I think next week we'll probably be doing the FLDS, but this time it's the shepherd's rod.
Nice.
Victor Houteff joined the Seventh Adventist Church in 1919, just 4 years after Ellen White, the church's prophet, died. In 1929, Houteff challenged church leaders over their interpretation of Isaiah 54 to 66, and said the church had gotten lax in its standards and needed reform. He then started sharing these ideas in the Sabbath school class he taught and a Bible study he led at the church. This obviously didn't go over very well, so he was asked to discontinue his class, and in 1913, he was disfellowshipped by his local church. Now, it was the local church that had to do that, not the church leadership, because in the Adventist church, all membership is held at the local level, and membership decisions can only be done by majority vote of the local church during a business meeting, which means it has to be scheduled in advance, and there has to be a quorum present.
Oh my God, I would not be able to handle this church.
And often a second reading.
Wow.
At a second business meeting. It's a long, drawn-out process. It takes, like...
That you adore.
If you resign your membership, like when I did, it took 2.5 months for that to happen, because it had to go through all of the readings and the business meetings and then finally be voted on, and yeah.
Just to resign? Yes, to be voted on?
Yeah.
That seems like... Oh, wow. Okay.
It's a membership decision.
Like, I quit. If you're okay with it.
Right. It's like, no, you don't. Like, what do you do in that situation? No, you don't. Quit. Yeah,
Theoretically, they can refuse and you can't do anything. You're still on the membership rolls.
Interesting.
That would be highly unlikely for them to do that. And I was prepared in case they had decided to not allow that, where I was going to outline page by page, chapter by patch. Okay, it was 2 pages in the church manual that dealt with reasons why you must remove somebody's membership. And out of I think it was 13 of them, I think I qualified on 8.
Nice.
Yeah.
You could have done a PowerPoint presentation.
Right? Wow.
So anyway, after getting disfellowshipped, he published and disfellowshipped is the old term. They stopped using that term in the 90s and went to removal of membership.
I was going to say dismembership doesn't flow well.
I like that, though. Dismembership is good, though.
I know, that was a joke.
Oh, okay. Sorry. And that's to be is distinguished from...
It's when you remove your arms and legs.
and that's distinguished from excommunication, which Catholics and Mormons do, and a few other groups, where excommunication, you are forbidden from ever communicating with this person ever again, and they are not going to be allowed into heaven. Groups who don't believe that the church controls who gets into heaven have a harder time doing excommunication, and they tend to go more with disfellowshipping, which is you're no longer a part of the church, and members probably shouldn't be talking to you much. And then the lighter one is removal from membership, which is just removing your name from the books.
Dismembership would also be like circumcision, right?
Yeah, there you go. We're talking about the shepherd's rod.
So then after this, he published his book, and it was called Shepherd's Rod. Later that year, he began handing out copies of it to church leaders at the General Conference session in San Francisco. And he claimed that everyone that he gave text to promised to read it and respond in writing, but only 2 ever did. And he'd given out 33 copies. He continued publishing books and pamphlets, and by 1933, allegations were being made that his materials and followers were being forcibly removed from Adventist churches. And he finally got a hearing with church leaders in 1934. And the same day as the start of the hearing, there was a meeting of the General Conference Executive Committee that declared his teachings heresy. This really pissed off him and his followers because they disfellowshipped him prior to declaring him a heretic. And
wait, yeah, how can you do that? I guess the heresy in terms of overall if he's not a member, then they're still saying he's a heretic in terms of what he's teaching. Is that they're saying it's just counter to Seventh-day Adventist?
Oh, he was arguing with church doctrine.
Right. So it was against the doctrine is what they're saying.
He was explicitly arguing with the church. Mm-hmm. And as a general rule of thumb, as we've talked about in previous episodes, if you disagree with the group, you are either a heretic or a reformer. Mm. The difference is whether or not people agree with you.
Right, yeah.
If they agree with you, you're a reformer. If they don't, you're a heretic. Mm-hmm. And he didn't get a lot of support, so he was labeled a heretic.
Right.
The Adventist Church doesn't call people heretics very often.
Oh, really? Okay.
It is a very rare thing. And that meeting that happened at General Conference headquarters was really in bad faith because he'd gotten a hearing with church leadership in California, and back in DC, there was a meeting the same day as his hearing was starting that called him a heretic. Mm. And they also did that to provide more justification for trying to push him and his followers out, because he and his followers, whether or not they had membership in the church, continued to attend church services at the Adventist Church and continued to push their views and hand out their pamphlets. And
is this the guy who was throwing pamphlets and stuff from the upper balconies?
We'll get there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And it was all, you said that it was about the interpretation of Isaiah 54 through 66. That's where the big difference of opinion was?
That's where it started.
Oh, okay.
It eventually expanded into more areas.
Okay.
He eventually had 12 points of disagreement.
Oh, okay.
And it was pretty much all about prophecy. Mm. And later that year, he formally formed the Shepherd's Rod Church, naming himself President and Prophet. And this was justified by the committee that did the hearing abruptly adjourning the meeting before actually going through the full week they'd promised. And the fact that they didn't respond to his points within 24 hours like they'd promised. In 1935, they bought an initial 189 acres outside of Waco, Texas, and they moved their headquarters to the Mount Carmel Center that they built there. And up to 125 people lived at the compound at one point. By its peak in the 1950s, the Shepherd's Rod, or Davidians, as they were also known, claimed 100,000 members, with most of them continuing to worship at Adventist churches. And this is, like Lauren had brought up, I heard stories about Davidians and other groups, and I think they might have both been splinter groups from the Davidians, taking up the balconies at the old Adventist church in Grants Pass, where there was a balcony on the left and the right side. One group would take one balcony, the other group would take the other balcony, and they would throw pamphlets down on the church members down below. And it was really disruptive. It was a real pain in the ass. And
it was like a flash mob of pamphlets all over.
Yeah. So then they eventually outgrew the building and were tired of that. So they specifically designed the new church they built in the late 80s with no balcony. Yeah.
Get rid of that problem.
And they sold the old one to Salvation Army. Hutef died in 1955, and his wife took over the organization. This resulted in a power struggle, with some even attempting to get the Adventist Church General Conference to intervene, which, of course, the General Conference ignored them because they're not going to get involved in the power struggle of a splinter group.
Right.
That would just be silly. And in the end, the organization disbanded and its members fractured into further splinter groups, most notably the Branch Davidians, who managed to keep 77 acres of the Mount Carmel compound, which was raided by the ATF in 1993. One interesting thing that happened with the ATF in 1993 was that greatly weakened the Branch Davidian group. And as a whole, groups like the Davidians basically disappeared. Like, they didn't actually stop existing. Their members stopped going to Adventist churches. And so that was really a problem of the 50s through 80s, and not anything I personally ever saw. But a weird issue. I had a teacher in high school who she'd been attending an Adventist church in Hawaii, where this guy was attending, or actually she was attending after he'd been there. But he'd been attending this church and doing Bible studies and started developing a following. And he later started going by the name of David Koresh.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's a movie or something that's coming out here pretty soon about that whole thing.
I
don't know if it's gonna be a movie or one of those like specials on TV or whatever, but yeah, I saw.
It looks like it's going to be a television miniseries.
Okay. Yeah, so that would be interesting because it was 93 that was, because I kind of vaguely remember that being 11, 12 years old, I guess, at that point. So yeah, I remember that, but not really understanding what was going on, but just seeing stuff on TV about like when they were doing that, what was going on. So
no, that was something that I was very aware of happening because it was a splinter group from the Adventist Church.
I had no idea about that part. So
Adventists paid pretty close attention to that. There was definitely a lot of fear that the government was going to be coming after them next, which there was no point in that. The ATF went after Koresh because he was stockpiling weapons.
Right, yeah.
And then publishing anti-government manifestos.
And then wasn't there like the child bride kind of stuff going on too? Yeah.
Yeah.
Which seems to always happen when you get into those that kind of level. That's always child bride stuff going on.
It gets, and one thing that gets really interesting is you tend to have a fracture that happens, and that first group is a little bit weirder than the first group.
Yep.
And then when that splits from there, they just go off the deep end.
It's like mutations that add on each other, and then you end up like with 3-headed animals. Kind of seems like it.
Oh man, with the Davidians,
yeah, I would say that's kind of.
Actually, I would say with Shepherd's Rod, you have the first mutation that just is a little weird, and then the second mutation, it's cancer.
Yeah,
it just goes full on.
Yeah,
horrible.
Yeah, and then they're so isolated. They don't. It's like then there's like that inbreeding thing happening. So it gets worse and worse, and yeah.
And it also ends up playing into modern events that are happening now because Koresh and Waco and Ruby Ridge and a couple other of those events around that same time period were fringe religious anti-government ultra-right wingers. And ATF and FBI were going after them for violating the law and for acts of domestic terrorism. This is also all part of the Sagebrush Rebellion of the 1980s, and they have become incredibly gun-shy, which is why they never really did anything against the Bundys.
Because they didn't want another Waco.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, the problem why Waco, and I think this is one of the things that is definitely worth pointing out, the difference between what Bundy and crew did at the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge and Waco and Ruby Ridge. Ruby Ridge was a family with children. A couple families with children. Children died.
Right.
Waco was a compound with families in it.
Right.
Children died. Everybody who was at the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge was an active participant in an armed rebellion against the United States.
Right, yeah.
That's a very, very different situation.
Yeah. Yeah. Different.
But anyway, these groups are kind of weird. And what you ended up getting with the Davidians, and the Branch Davidians are a distinct group from the earlier Davidians. But by the time you got to David Koresh, he thought that he started having sex with the head of the Branch Davidians, she was in her 60s, and they believed that they would have a child together who would be the Messiah.
She was the head. A female was the head of the whole thing? Oh, interesting. Okay.
And then he managed to take over from her, and then decided he, like David, needed to have many wives. So he started taking wives from members and marrying children.
Yeah.
So that was Rachel Koresh? Is that his wife's name?
Well, I haven't actually said anything about David Koresh's main wife.
Oh, okay. Never mind then. I was just wondering because the girl who plays Supergirl is going to play his wife in this miniseries, which starts actually on the 31st on Spike TV.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah. All right. Let's go ahead and take a break, and then we'll get started with news. Atheist Nomads is proudly brought to you by Archway Hosting. Check out their low-price, full-featured hosting solutions at archwayhosting.com. That's ARCHWAY hosting.com. We're also brought to you by listeners just like you. You can find out how you can become a patron at patreon.com/atheistnomads. That's patreon.com/atheistnomads. Last Monday, Tony Perkins from the Family Research Council had the following to say about Trump and the allegations that he paid Stormy Daniels to keep quiet about their affair.
Evangelicals did not vote for Donald Trump based on his moral qualifications, but based upon what he said he was going to do and who he was surrounding himself with. We kind of gave him, all right, you get a mulligan. You get a do-over here. You can start.
A mulligan for 70 years of his life.
Hey, like the guy committed, this is what he's committed to.
Right.
And as long as he commits to that and continues on that, he will have the support of evangelicals. From a policy standpoint, he has delivered more than any other president in my lifetime.
Okay, so they didn't back him because he was a good Christian. They backed him because he wanted to do away with the Johnson Amendment and attack women's rights and gay rights.
Yeah, which is exactly what wealthy white evangelicals want.
Right, yeah.
All right, so this, of course, has gotten some people's attention because, you know, if you look at it, evangelicals had nothing but bad things to say about Obama.
Mm-hmm.
Despite the fact that Obama
was actually Christian,
yeah. Was faithful to his wife, was a good family man.
Right.
His jokes were bad, but he was a good dad.
If you look at everything
that should be
that a Christian should be looking for in a president,
right.
Obama was that.
Right.
Trump, on the other hand, is everything a Nazi would be looking for in a president.
Yeah. Nazis were religious.
They were Christian, yes. But there are some conservatives who are not happy with this. The conservatives, or the evangelicals still liking Trump, that is. Michael Steele, the former chairman of the Republican National Committee, said this while he guest on MSNBC's Hardball.
Shut the hell up and don't ever preach to me about anything ever again. I don't want to hear it, because after telling me how to live my life, who to love, what to believe, what not to believe, what to do and what not to do, and now you sit back and the prostitutes don't matter, the grabbing the you know what doesn't matter, the outright behavior and lies don't matter, just shut up.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Former chairman of the RNC.
Was this the guy who just stepped down?
He left a while ago.
Okay.
Over Trump.
Yeah.
I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't blame him for bailing on that ship.
Yeah. Yeah, it is pretty ridiculous to be, running off of supposedly the fact that he's going to be taking on these issues that they see are as moral issues, the women's reproductive rights and then gay marriage and stuff like that, and those being like such a moral outrage thing for them. But then they're just going to ignore the other things that are moral outrages or should be, but they just like, oh, well, but he's going to get the job done. So that doesn't, it doesn't make sense to anyone.
Yeah,
really.
The person who gets the job done, that's like mob mentality.
Yeah.
That's like, oh, well, he may have murdered a few people, but, the head of the gang, he'll get things done.
Right. What's the end justifies the means, which is, doesn't usually work out.
Not usually, as we are seeing.
But evangelicals who want a Christian theocracy, who, or at least claim to want a Christian theocracy, and who keep claiming the moral high ground, have lost it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, I would say they never had it, but they have definitely lost it because they can't even be consistent.
Yeah.
They are outright hypocrites.
Well, I think it's been pretty revealing to everybody as to what their actual agenda is and how far they will go with it. So in that, it's been good, I guess. Because they can't really pretend that it's anything but that's what they want to do is they're going to do it however they can get it done. It doesn't really matter. So.
Yeah. All right. Now we're going to move on to crazy stuff from state legislatures. This is always a fun area for news in the early part of the year because state legislatures are where the craziest people interested in politics actually get their start, and they can try some amazing, amazing stuff. First off, we have one from Idaho, which unfortunately Idaho never disappoints. We have one of the highest vaccine exemption rates in the country, so it shouldn't be surprising that there's a bill on the topic that went through the Idaho State Senate Health and Welfare Committee and that passed after an hour of debate by a vote of 5-4.
Oh.
Now, we could hope this is something good, but this is the Idaho State Legislature we're talking about. So the bill, backed by the anti-vax group Health Freedom Idaho, clarifies state law and removes the requirement to use state forms instead allowing parents to simply write a letter to the school saying they are refusing to vaccinate their children. Because filling out a government form is too much.
Is that
oh my
somehow
God, such
suppressing
effort.
is that suppressing their
Persecution.
religious freedom by making them fill out a state form, I guess?
Well, Health Freedom Idaho goes for... They don't really push the religious freedom element as much, but they do also include that. But it's one of their more minor things. Their big push is parental rights.
Yeah, okay. Which, is that not connected to the religious ideas? Or is that just... I don't know that I know very many people that don't have a religious kind of connection to the reasons they want to be able to control, have the parental right thing.
But you can claim
so
religion
strongly.
even if... I think people are just lying. They're just straight up lying. They don't have a religious problem with it. They just don't want to do it, so they're going to sign the paper anyway. But that's...
Oh, all you have to do is look at mommy groups on the internet and find...
Oh my God, I have not joined any on Facebook for that reason, because...
Most of them aren't religious, and they are insane.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 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 I was on those a lot when I was pregnant with my first kid, and it's like some of the, especially when the issues that can become very heated and very violent are like kind of laughable from the outside.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
It's not something that that they're not talking about life or death situations here. They're literally talking about lifestyle choices, and
like breastfeeding or bottle feeding your kid, or circumcising or not, or
do you have the crib by the window, or do you have it up against? Oh my God!
Are you co-sleeping, or are you making your child sleep in the crib, because that's like basically a prison? It's some people are. I appreciate people being passionate, but it's just a little bit. Yeah.
And I can appreciate that people are passionate about their kids, but when it comes to protecting people outside of your family circle, you have to give some consideration. I mean, what's the first thing that happens when you send your kid to daycare? They come home sick.
Right.
It's just natural. It's just going to happen. So if you don't vaccinate your kid and they go and they start carrying stuff and they start spreading it around to everybody else, then that's how you get these. I mean, they're getting also measles and meningitis and diphtheria apparently is back. I mean, it's... We
have a really bad pertussis outbreak going on right now in the Treasure Valley. One of the worst in a couple decades.
Whooping cough.
Pertussis is whooping cough.
It's less about protecting your own and more about protecting everybody else.
Right.
Because you can't guarantee that everybody else can even get the vaccine.
Right.
They could be, immunocompromised. They could be elderly. They are freaking children, so they already have a disadvantage.
Well, okay, so if you look at the numbers, at the point that 95% of the population is vaccinated, you have effective herd immunity.
Right.
That is assuming that 2 to 5% don't respond to the vaccine, which is normal, and that 2 to 5% can't get the vaccine because of
allergies
actual
or
medical contraindications.
Right.
So either allergies, or they have an immune disorder of some kind, cancer, something like that makes it so that getting a vaccine generally either isn't safe or isn't going to be effective. And you don't give vaccines to somebody that you know aren't going to be effective. That's one reason why smallpox vaccination ended. It was no longer needed, therefore there was no benefit in continuing to give it.
Right.
Unless you work in a very specific set of fields where you might actually come in contact with it. So very few people get smallpox vaccines. That's very different when it comes to things like measles, which are still prevalent in most of the world.
Yeah.
And polio, which has nearly been eradicated, but not quite yet.
Right.
It could come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be. And I kind of understand the where people are coming from with influenza. I get it. It's not the same thing every year. It's not 100% efficient. It's a hassle, etc., etc. But this year we're having one of the worst influenza outbreaks in livable history. The last one was 1918. It wiped out more people than World War II.
Wow.
We don't want that to happen again, but people think that we're past that, I guess, that,
Right.
That'll never happen again. So if they skip the flu shot, then it's no big deal.
And this year's flu shot's being considered to be 30 to 50% effective. Part of the reason for that is the big bad strain is one that you can't as effectively make vaccines for. You have to mutate it a little bit too much to be able to generate the vaccine out of chicken eggs. So it makes it so that the vaccine isn't quite a perfect match. Now,
But it's better than nothing.
the benefit of the flu shot, even if it's only 10% effective, that effectiveness is based on it preventing you from getting infected. Even if it prevents you from getting infected, it will probably help keep you from dying.
Right.
I mean, there are people, there's that 23-year-old weightlifter who died. There are tons of elderly and children who are on freaking life support because of this flu. So, I don't know. It just seems to me it's so selfish to say, I don't want to give my kids the flu vaccine because last time I did it, it made them sick.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, one, that was purely coincidence that you happened to get a cold at the same time that you got the flu shot.
Right.
And, a very likely coincidence because they happen at the same seasons. Not related at all. But just because you think it's a hassle?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
You're going to the grocery store anyway. It takes 5 minutes to get a flu shot.
Yeah.
And it's free on all insurances.
Yeah.
And it could keep your kid from dying.
Yeah.
But whatever.
Or your
Don't
parents
listen to me. I'm just on Facebook mommy groups.
Yeah. So, now not vaccinating your kids is going to be just a little bit easier in Idaho. Mississippi, of course, never disappoints. And House Bill 1100 would require that all schools start each day with a 60-second moment of reflection, require that all classrooms, school auditoriums, and school cafeterias must have a display of the 10 Commandments and have "In God We Trust" on them, and it has to be a minimum of 11 by 14 inches.
Oh my God.
Wow.
And finally, it requires that every morning, teachers must recite the 10 Commandments aloud at the beginning of the first hour of class.
Wow.
But any kids who object don't have to be there for it, and any teachers who object don't have to do it.
All right. So if you're a kid who objects, you are literally missing out on education time because of this.
Yeah.
Well, okay, for one kid who doesn't want to do it, the teacher has to say, okay, it's time to recite the 10 Commandments.
Little Timmy, please exit the room.
Right. Yeah.
For 20 seconds and then come back in. And then you have to wait for Timmy to get up from the back of the classroom, walk all the way to the door, exit the room.
Not to mention how incredibly humiliating that is.
Yeah.
At any age, there is not a single age that I can think of where you're in school and that wouldn't end up with you being harassed on the playground, harassed at lunch, harassed right there in the classroom, even by the teacher. I mean, we've seen what these teachers can do to these kids.
Yeah.
It's pretty messed up psychologically, emotionally. But whatever, Mississippi.
Right.
You just keep on striving to stay at the bottom there.
What do they think this would accomplish, really?
It's bringing God back into the schools.
Right, but it,
kids will be more moral, I guess.
I understand it's just like this idea, the more that you can insert these ideas into things, they think it's going to be good, but it's just like, and practically, is this going to do anything except for just eat up time and resources, and nobody really
the cost
cares.
associated with it is going to be insane.
The amount of time they have to spend on even just one of the commandments, the fourth, which is incredibly long. Well, actually, this would depend on do they do the short version or the long version.
Right, yeah.
If it's the short version, why the hell are you even doing it? And if it's the long version, that is long.
Right.
It's not going to go anywhere.
Right.
Hopefully.
No, this will hopefully.
And if it does, they've got lawsuits, at the ready.
Right.
Yeah.
What if they did like the 60 seconds, or is that 60 seconds of reflection?
Yeah.
But then they'd made them do a different religion every time. I'm sure they would not be happy about
Actually,
that.
The moment of reflection, I believe, would be silent.
Oh, okay.
A moment of silent reflection, I think, is actually a good idea.
Yeah.
Especially if you have some homeroom discussion afterwards. If something traumatic has recently happened, kids can talk about certain things. But that's even that is like a fine line, because you better have some kind of counselor or some kind of mediator guiding that. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, and generally, what you're describing, that could easily end up turning into 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And
that would have to be a whole thing. This
Yeah.
isn't just, okay, sit in your desk quietly for 20 seconds, go.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the silent game with kids, and that's not going to happen.
Right.
It's a complete waste of time.
Yeah.
Literally.
The goal is to allow kids to pray. If they need to pray,
Yeah.
they can pray
Yeah.
anytime they want.
Yeah. Supposedly.
And here's a great idea. They can pray at home.
Right. Exactly.
They can pray anywhere.
Yeah.
At any time, as long as they're not forcing somebody else to do it.
Yeah.
So this bill will either hopefully fail in committee, if not, hopefully fail in the House. And if it goes past that, I highly doubt it would make it through the Senate, get signed into law by the governor, and it would never, ever go into effect, even if it did.
Right.
Because, the 60-second moment of reflection, that's legal. Stupid, but legal. The rest of this is blatantly, completely unconstitutional.
Right. Yeah. So it's just a waste of time.
I swear it's somebody grandstanding. It's somebody who wrote something to try and get into the news.
Yeah. And
So
to
that
be
next
all upset
time-
when it gets rejected.
Yeah, and claim that they're being persecuted. It's like a setup.
Yeah.
Missouri State Representative T.J. Berry, who is also a deacon at the First Baptist Church in Kearney, Missouri, of
That
course.
sounds like a name you'd give your teddy bear.
What was it?
TJ Barry.
It does, yeah.
That's adorable.
That
I'm
is
sorry,
kinda
Mr. TJ Barry, but that is adorable.
He introduced a bill that would hand regulation of marriage over to churches and allow those who don't want a church wedding to get a domestic partnership.
Huh. You know what? I actually don't know how I feel about this, because it would kind of take care of some stuff. But blatantly illegal and unconstitutional as well.
Actually, it's not.
Oh, it's not?
No. This would be perfectly legal to do because marriage is something that is purely regulated by the states. The rule is, per the U.S. Supreme Court, whatever rule you have, it has to be equal for all people.
It's that whole segregated but equal thing that I don't find comfortable with.
For this to be legal, marriage has to be removed from the books completely and replaced with domestic partnerships.
Right.
So
which I'm kind of all for.
Yeah, that I don't.
There's a number of European countries that do something similar, where you go to the courthouse and you get your civil union, and then if you want a religious ceremony, you go to a church for a religious ceremony.
Right.
That's what people basically do anyway, right?
Yeah.
That would be fine unless you look at the bigger picture. If you have a domestic partnership in Missouri that is considered equal to marriage in Missouri law, then okay, that's fine for things and life in Missouri, until you file your federal taxes, where if you're not married, you can't file as married.
Right. It's exactly what happened when gay marriage was being allowed in just a few states.
Oh, okay.
You could get married in Massachusetts,
right?
But when you got back to Idaho, it didn't do you any good.
Right.
You didn't get any of the tax benefits, any of the government benefits.
So it's just not recognized as the same thing.
And there's also the issue of other states. If you get a domestic partnership in Missouri and then you move to Arkansas, that's meaningless.
You'd have to
then get married in Arkansas.
So it would just have to be done everywhere for it to really work.
At a minimum, we would need Congress to pass a law that says that domestic partnerships, civil unions, and marriages are equal in all ways under the law, and any reference to any of them applies to all of them.
Right.
And all states are required to recognize any of them equally under whatever laws they have.
Right.
What about religious marriages that aren't seen as being equal, like child brides and multiple wives kind of thing? What if somebody decides to get married in a church but not get the like domestic partnership or civil union through the state? Does that mess things
under
up?
this Missouri bill, it'd be up to the church to decide what marriage is.
Yeah, no, see,
so
that's
conceivably, you could have a church that decides that, yes, TJ Barry, was that his name?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
TJ Barry can marry 5 8-year-old girls. And if the church says that's okay, that's okay.
Okay. That doesn't sound like a great idea now.
Yeah, I just imagine a man in a giant teddy bear outfit. It's like, God, this is getting creepier and creepier.
with 8 child
like
brides.
Freaking pedo bear. Oh, but it's such a cute name.
Yeah.
This is what that would allow.
Okay, well,
it would have made it so that
there you go.
What David Koresh did with marrying all those children, perfectly legal. Yep, because the church decides what marriage is. And I think where this bill would most specifically be unconstitutional is the fact that you could get married at a church, and if you don't want that, you can get a domestic partnership from the state, which would mean there is a separate but equal.
Yeah, that was the red flag that I saw right away, because that never works out.
Yeah, the way it would have to work would be marriage is not a state thing. Civil unions are the state thing. And if you want to get married, you start at the state and then you go to your wedding.
Right.
All right. It's time for another break. And we have some feedback and the rest of the news. We love hearing from our listeners. You can email us at contact@atheistnomads.com, tweet us @atheistnomads, send us a message on our Facebook page at facebook.com/atheistnomads, or better yet, call us and leave us a message at 541-203-0666. We might even play it on the show. You can also help us out by leaving us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or your podcast directory of choice. All right, now for feedback. Some of this is catching up since I have been not doing a good job of keeping up with it since the break. Regarding episode 232, which was Emancipation of a Black Atheist with D.K. Evans, Beej Price wrote, might be a good idea for parents to teach their white children that skin color does not determine character.
Yeah, that's basically...
I agree.
I think it'd be a good place to start that observable characteristics do not determine character at all.
I just remember when I realized that, like, just because someone's a Christian does not mean they're going to be a good person to be around, or because they claim they're a Christian, that doesn't really mean that much, in terms of how they're going to act. So a lot of the time. And
also somebody claiming to be a Christian doesn't mean they're going to be a terrible, horrible asshole.
Right. Yeah. So good idea overall.
Regarding 233, we're parents and we're back, from Fire 262. Huzzah! Congratulations.
I love huzzah. Such a great word.
Yeah.
Those two in this next one were all from YouTube. Just interesting. We don't get a whole lot of feedback on there.
We get no watchers on YouTube. It's like
Fire 262 has actually been apparently going back through our back catalog on YouTube and leaving a bunch of comments on old episodes.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So I haven't been reading those on the show, but Fire, thank you for going back through that. Regarding 234, Small Town Atheist with Kylie.
Yeah.
From Ungerton, atheism is falsified by science. The real creator, evolver, and ruler of the universe, the all-natural God, equals the law of nature, the laws of nature. Begin parentheses that calibrate and determine all the natural processes, in parentheses, and forces of physics, begin parentheses, that achieve all past, present, and future reality itself corresponding to the laws of nature, in parentheses, period. Scientific peer-reviewed evidence verified beyond a reasonable doubt the true identification and nature of God. Atheism, R.I.P.
Oh, wow.
Oh, so they think they just dropped the mic on that one?
Was that it related to something that
No, I don't. This was not related to what we said. This is a person who probably goes through any atheist podcast and then sends them messages saying, mic drop,
right,
checkmate atheism, and then they move on to the next one and they don't even.
No, it's like on the dating sites where they just copy paste. Hey, what's up? What's going on? Just hoping that they get some response kind of thing.
That somebody responds.
Yeah.
Yep. Anyway, the idea that nature is God, that's not a new one.
Right.
That's certainly not one that atheists have been like defeated by.
Right. Yeah.
It's just a lack of belief in that God. So if your God encompasses all of nature and physical forces, that's fine.
Right, that's just giving it the name of God, which is like, that's not a problem.
We
really.
give it the name of science.
Yeah. Or just nature. Yeah.
So I'm sorry, that's not rest in peace atheism. That's just like, okay, that's great for you.
Right.
That's go for a walk. But doesn't change or shatter my lack of belief either.
Now, my big question with it, if peer-reviewed scientific research has proven atheism wrong and there is a God, can I see the citation for that?
Right. Yeah.
Citation needed. I love that shirt.
Yeah.
The motto. I should cross-stitch that and put it up in the nursery so she learns it. Well, her first words will be citation. But, so, I think it's just one of those trolls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Which is actually, I have to give him credit for, because that was a short but sweet one. Mm-hmm. Usually when we get trolls like that, it is a wall of text.
Yeah.
And you're not going to read through that.
No.
And if you do, you're just going to laugh your head off anyway.
Yeah.
This was actually kind of a nice, succinct little view of nature is God and God is nature. And I'm okay with that. It's like, okay.
Right.
I have no problems with that. Especially if you donate your tithing to Nature Conservancy.
There you go. That's a good one.
But, yeah.
It's also funny.
Uh-huh. Also funny. R.I.P. atheism. Oh my god.
Right. I always like that. Checkmate.
Checkmate atheist.
All right, for the final bit of feedback from Donna Fern. Just listen to the interview with Kylie. She was charming and engaging, and I enjoyed it. At about 21:45-minute mark, when telling a story about a caper her brother tried to pull off, she made the statement, one of the girls. It was like the most innocent-looking blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl. Blonde hair and blue eyes have no connection to innocence, yet this association is so deeply embedded into the culture it just rolled by. The corollary, which is the assumption of aggression and violence for people who have dark skin, is equally deeply embedded. These casual associations are problematic, and so I'm pointing it out.
Yeah. So I have to admit, I got super defensive when I first read this. I was like, oh my God, you can't say anything without somebody getting offended.
Right.
Which is exactly the problem.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what she's trying to point out. So listening to him say that a second time now, and I'm just like, oh my God, she's right. So yeah, I appreciate her pointing that out. Not because we obviously meant no offense by that.
Right. Yeah.
And especially if you live in this area where it is so white.
Yeah.
The person you're going to describe is going to have white characteristics. But to equate that to innocence,
right,
that is part of that overarching problem that we have in this society.
Right.
Now,
okay. Now I was trying to remember what story I was saying, and now I remember.
Caper. I love that term.
Right. Yeah, the one when he was bringing the fireworks. I think from that's what it was. And no, it's like I appreciate that because that's something that like she said is I didn't even think of that because some of those things that are embedded you don't even realize until it's pointed out to you that. And to me, it's like that doesn't make. I don't feel defensive about that because if I know that I'm not doing those things doing that with the knowledge of I know this is offensive and I'm continuing to do it. It's like now that that's been pointed out, I can try to not do it anymore because now I'm aware of it. So I appreciate that kind of thing. So now, it's not necessarily
blonde hair, blue eyes. In my mind, there are two correlations with that. There is the normal everyday one of childlike, because most white children have blonde hair and blue eyes when they are very young. The other is Hitler's ideal area.
Right, yeah.
Now, I could easily see how that could be viewed as being through the it sounds kind of Nazi lens, where I think pointing that out, she was innocent and looked like a child. And that was one more thing that made her look more childlike, thus more innocent.
Right.
Unfortunately, that is a very Northern European white viewpoint because, that doesn't transcend to other cultures.
Are blonde-haired, blue-eyed. I mean,
Right.
that's just... Kids aren't innocent either. You gotta nick that one in the bud.
Right.
They know what they're doing, the manipulative little bastards.
Right. And I think maybe, now I'm trying to think of where I was going with it, being that, like, with when you look at, even maybe just saying, like, people would view, if people were viewing, or at least people that are, like, grow up in the same kind of mentality that I did, people would probably look at a girl that looked like that and assume that they were more innocent than someone who didn't. And that's just like pointing out the fact that she was, maybe it was even like a calculated thing on my brother's part to, like, she's not going to be suspected, so I'm going to give it to her. So, but I appreciate pointing that out.
Which also, I think there is a deep-seated element, like that she pointed out, that we view things, associate particular characteristics like being young, being female, blonde hair and blue eyes with innocence.
Yeah.
And the more of those you can check off, the more innocent you look and the more likely you are to get away with stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And the more you can't check those off, the more you can't get away with.
Yeah, as a blonde-haired, blue-eyed female, I can say with certainty I've gotten away with more crap than somebody who was brunette, had brown eyes, and or had dark skin.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
It's just a matter of fact. I've not that I've gotten away with anything.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a drug dealer or anything, but I've ran a stop sign and gotten off, or was speeding and gotten off, that kind of thing. Well, my friend who's dark skinned gets pulled over for no reason.
Right. Yeah.
And has to defend himself. It's like, that's just the way it is. And that is wrong.
Yeah. It's white centric and it's incredibly deeply ingrained.
Yeah. So my initial reaction was basically not all the not all reaction. Well, not all blonde haired, blue eyed people are like that. It's like, well, that's not the problem we're talking about, is it?
Right.
Yeah. It's the fact that a blonde haired, blue eyed teenage girl with, pasty white complexion can get away with anything, where a
anybody else
teenage boy
gets shot.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So thank you for that. That was it made me think, and that's good.
Yeah.
You need to face those demons.
Well, speaking of demons, and this isn't even the story that has exorcism in it, but this guy is even more of a demon. Dr. Larry Nassar is an osteopath who works for Michigan State University, or at least worked for Michigan State University, and provided sports medical care for the school's athletic programs. And he also provided those services for the U.S. Olympic gymnastics team.
Yeah, everybody get your barf bags ready.
Yeah.
And he has pled guilty to 7 counts of criminal sexual conduct, netting himself a 40 to 170 year sentence, and has sentencing coming up for 3 more counts of the same charge. He has also received a 60-year sentence on federal child pornography charges.
Yeah.
These are consecutive sentences, not concurrent sentences. The earliest he would be eligible for parole is at 145 years old.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw a video of the judge talking to him, basically saying, I just signed your death warrant or whatever.
Sentence. Yeah.
Which is...
death certificate. That was
death certificate, yeah.
And you'd think that would be a sad thing for a judge to say, but after learning about intravaginal manipulation, I do not feel that way.
Yeah. Well, and in the video, she also said, would you like to remove your plea? And he's like, no, ma'am. Like, so he still doesn't have remorse or whatever. So, yeah.
More than 150 victims of his abuse. Some of them, it started when they were as young as 6.
Yeah.
Have come forward. And most of them spoke at a sentencing hearing.
Wow.
This has gotten some claims that the judge was grandstanding, but no, you're sentencing a monster.
Yeah. Yeah.
The defendant has a right to face his accusers.
Mm-hmm.
He got to face his accusers.
Mm-hmm.
She was following the letter of the Constitution.
Right.
His victims also, I believe, have a right to face the person who harmed them.
Yeah.
I mean, that resolved more issues than a lifetime of therapy could ever.
Right.
Which many of them have had.
Yeah. And may have to continue.
I mean, and this is something I'm going to be particularly sensitive about now watching Olympic events, is looking at how young these athletes are. There is no reason why a 14-year-old has to be pushed to be the best in the world.
Right.
That's just, I don't know. To me, it just seems kind of, what has that girl been doing for 14 years?
Yeah.
Or what has that boy been doing for the past 19 years? It's like,
now, most of the U.S. Olympics, I think it was around 2000, they set the minimum age at 16. Because before that, it was 14. So 1996 Summer Olympics, which I watched all day, every day that summer, all of those girls, 14 to 18 years old, were getting assaulted by this guy.
Yeah. And there's a bigger picture here especially with Olympics and that top tier athleticism, is that there's a lot of woo scientifically, medically. There's no reason why cupping should have taken off like it did. This osteopath, there's a lot of good medicine that can be learned through being a doctor of osteopathy, but there's still the fringe stuff that has no scientific correlation, has no citations. It's just an excuse for a guy to molest girls.
A DO gets about 2 years of science-based medicine and 2 years of bullshit.
A what? I didn't know what you said.
Doctor of osteopathy.
Oh, okay.
Which is the school that we're getting here in Meridian.
Yeah.
So, yay.
And 2 years of learning about chiropractic and homeopathy and all kinds of alternative medicine.
Right.
And some end up being okay. Most of them are okay and practice good, solid medicine, but they are considered to be equal to medical doctors.
Really? Wow.
They call them doctor. And that's how this guy got away with this for so long, was that if the girls complained, they were told time and time again by everybody that he's the best doctor in the country. And just to do what he says, because he's the best doctor.
And I think probably the added...
And he shouldn't have had that title.
Yeah, the added element of the competition is like they didn't want to not do it because that could jeopardize their chances, in their mind. So, and
there were some of these girls who were so sore from his pelvic exams that they couldn't perform. I mean, he's like, then what's even the point?
Yeah.
This guy was a monster.
Yeah. We're talking sports medicine. There is no justifiable reason to fist teenage girls as a part of sports medicine.
With no lube, no gloves. I mean, this... the descriptions, like I said, get your vomit bag ready because this guy really was sick. And the fact that administrators, that there were sports officials, coaches that knew that this was happening and just let it go because he had the term doctor in front of his name.
Was it that they, because I guess I haven't really followed some of this, that parents were not aware, but they were told, and then people just didn't think it was really happening.
They were told that he's the best, that he is a doctor, he knows what he's doing, that let it go.
Now, I could imagine if you're a 13-year-old gymnast getting a pelvic exam, that could be concerning. And I can also imagine it being very easy for parents to say, he's a doctor, it's okay.
Right.
No, he was assaulting her.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
What do they don't have in a lot of I would think in those situations they would have someone else in the room. It was just him and the patient. They didn't
and Trevor Noah from the Daily Show did a little speech about this, and he brought up a really good point that this guy's been sentenced to 140 175 years. Some of that sentence should be divvied up to the enablers.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about the enablers.
So the enablers, that's the people who saw that this was happening, heard the complaints, and ignored or willfully hurt these people, these girls.
Currently, there are lawsuits against USA Gymnastics, the U.S. Olympic Committee, and Michigan State University. Numerous leaders and board members from these organizations, including the president and the athletics director for Michigan State, have resigned, and there are further investigations ongoing to determine how many leaders across these organizations were involved in these cover-ups.
Right.
And they were cover-ups.
Yeah. I mean, this is like freaking Roman Catholic size.
Yeah,
cover-up.
This is going deep enough that the Michigan House Speaker is working with House lawyers to figure out how he can legally remove the entire Board of Trustees of Michigan State University.
Wow.
Dozens, if not hundreds of heads are going to roll over this, and that's not enough.
Yeah.
They need more than to be fired. They need charged. They are accessories to a crime.
Yeah. And wasn't there's a time period of where he was being investigated and he was still allowed to continue practicing?
And that happens a lot. That's often the like what you see with the police officers who are put on paid leave or are continue to work. Teachers that have complaints against them are continued to work while the investigation is going, and then you can go back and say, why did you let that continue?
Yeah.
Right. Well, in 2015,
but it's all hindsight.
In 2015, he was removed from practicing any medicine at Michigan State. He'd already been fired from USA Gymnastics, and he got moved to a teaching role. Full salary. Teaching role.
So
now, a month later, they fired him, and he handed over, as he was getting transitioned to the teaching role, a bunch of records to another doctor. She took a look at all these records and panicked. Didn't tell anyone. She's resigned over that.
She panicked over like what he had written in terms of what had happened?
He told her what he had been doing and why he was getting removed and gave her all of the records. And she was able to flip through the records and see solid documentation of all of the abuse. There is a reason he pled guilty.
Wow.
He knew what he was doing. Because he either felt that it was true medicine or he was a pervert.
Yeah.
And knew that he'd gotten away with it.
Yeah. If you've been doing it for that long, there's probably an element of like, he didn't think he was going to get caught because there's
even an element of he may not have even thought he was doing anything wrong.
Right. Yeah.
Where he had been supported by so many people for so long, he just thought, okay, this is the way, this is what works. And this is
kind of like a Weinstein, just gets more and more blatant. And then it's like, they're surprised that people are even, that there's a problem now. It's because they've done it for so long. Yeah.
Yeah. Most people would have at most thought he was just doing some alternative techniques. No, it was rape.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. So I agree with Trevor Noah on that one. I think it would be nice to get 10% here, 10% there.
Right,
criminal charges, kind of just, it's like an Oprah show. You get charged and you get charged and you get charged.
Well, they should all get charged because they are accessories to a crime.
Not to mention conspiracy.
Yeah.
So
one thing that is worth noting, since we do have an international audience, osteopaths in the United States have generally gone the direction of scientific medicine, unlike osteopaths in some countries, like England, where they are full-on woo. So an osteopath in England and an osteopath in the U.S. are very different. In 2015, a woman using the name Mary Doe in legal documents challenged Missouri's informed consent and waiting period law for abortions, claiming that the scientifically inaccurate material, ultrasound, and expense involved in the waiting period violated her sincerely held religious beliefs as a member of the Satanic Temple. This is something we've talked about several times as this case has made its way through the courts. Well, it has now been argued before the Missouri Supreme Court. It went to the state Supreme Court when one of the Supreme Court justices looked at the arguments during the appeal and said that the Satanic Temple has a really good claim here. And that judge decided to move it up to the state Supreme Court.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, they haven't ruled yet, but the state's argument is that she didn't clearly state her religious objections. No, she provided the doctor with a clear letter obtaining her objections,
Right.
and then requested an injunction from a judge. So, no, she not only did she have everything clearly documented, she had everything perfectly documented with the intent
Right.
of taking this to court.
That's good.
My guess is this is why she waited 3 months to get an abortion, was she knew she was going to do it, so she wanted to get all of her ducks in a row to be able to make this case. One of the judges during the hearing did note that while doctors are required to give patients the booklet, she wasn't required to read it.
Right. That's a fine line. I mean, I have to admit, I throw almost everything away when they give me pamphlets of anything.
Right.
But
and the privacy, the HIPAA thing they have you sign all the time, doesn't even read it anymore. You just sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's not the point. The point is that the money is being spent.
No, the
time is being spent.
No, the point is you are signing an informed consent form that is saying that you acknowledge that you have at least had an opportunity to review this material, and the material that is being given to you, as mandated by the state of Missouri, is making blatantly unscientific claims, such as life begins at conception.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So hopefully this law will be done.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Yeah, I have to give her credit, man. Because, I mean, there's so many suits that fell through because the person was no longer in standing. Because they either waited too long, they waited till after they had the abortion, or they waited till the child was born. And those get thrown out all the time. And this person managed to get...
I'm amazed this one made it through.
I mean, yeah. Every I was dotted and every T was crossed. And
she also got lucky. Any judge throughout the entire process could have easily thrown this out.
Yeah.
But it was a good enough argument they couldn't.
Yeah.
No, you always can. Now, I think they would have gotten the counterclaim of... Now, and I think this is one of the reasons why... Actually, no, the reason why they couldn't, this was a violation of her religious freedom, not a violation of her other rights.
Right, because as a woman, she doesn't have any, as we have learned. But as a religious person, a person belonging to the Satanic Temple, she does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like using their own thing against them.
God.
Because, generally,
makes me sick to say that.
Generally speaking, you make a claim about anything abortion related, it's going to be dismissed for lack of standing as soon as you aren't pregnant.
Yeah.
But this wasn't an abortion case. This was a violation of her religious freedom case.
Right.
Very smart.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kylie, thank you so much for joining us.
Of course, anytime.
Lauren, thank you for powering through despite your cold.
Yes.
Yay.
And listeners, remember, not all those who wander are lost. Thank you for listening to another episode of Atheist Nomads. You can find show notes and contact information at atheistnomads.com. Follow us on Twitter at Atheist Nomads, and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Atheist Nomads. Please subscribe to the show in iTunes, Stitcher, or your podcatcher of choice, and while you're there, feel free to leave us a review. Theme music is courtesy of Sturdy Fred. Until next time, this has been the Atheist Nomads.